What's up, guys? It is your girl, Sarah from Sarah's House here. Thank you so much for joining today. I feel like I just saw y'all yesterday, and I did on my weekly chat accountability. So make sure to join me every Monday, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard for an accountability chat. We just casually check in with your successes and your goals for the next week. It is open to anybody who wants to join. Also, I do these live chats. I have Jenny Walker here today, but I do these live chats with anybody. Well, not most people, anyone who's commented to me, I do. If you have something to share with the community, that's what this channel is about. Just because you don't spend the endless hours that it takes to have a YouTube channel does not mean that you don't have something to share with the community. And so if you do have something to share with the community, definitely send me a DM and we will set up a time to chat about it. Or if there's certain things that you would like to see, I've had a couple of people this week DM for certain things. Hey, I want to see, this content. So I search high and low and find someone to talk about it if it's not something that I'm familiar with. So send me a DM, leave comments down below if you have stuff like that. Today, we are going to be talking with Jenny Walker about consignment for resellers. I was really interested to talk to her. We're going to get a little into her story because her story is really interesting too. We're chatting a little bit before we went live about what she specifically sells, which is really interesting. That's a whole nother live though, for sure. But we'll talk a little bit with her about her story and her background. But the meat of today's conversation is going to be consignment for resellers. I've heard this mentioned. I've had it mentioned to me quite a few times because sourcing right now is hard. Thrift stores are not open, or if they are, thrift stores are open, but it's not good stuff. They're holding a lot of stuff. They're not putting stuff out as often. The bins, you can only be there for 2 hours and you're like, you can only be at your bin. So we kind of have to think outside of the box if we want to make it through this hump. And I think consignment is an option. It doesn't have to be what works for you, but I do want someone to talk about it so you can kind of see how it works and see if it is something that you would like to try. So Jenny, I am going to have you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into reselling, and then you do a brick and mortar as well, right?
I sure do.
Okay, yeah. Tell us your whole life story in like 3 minutes.
Oh God, I just failed the elevator pitch. Yeah, I'm a charity fundraising. My career has been in charity fundraising my whole life, but I've always had a lifelong passion for fashion on the side. And I learned about consignment when I was like 13. My mother took me to my first consignment shop. And then when I was a teenager, I started consigning and in Atlanta, Georgia, where I was living. And my first check was $300, which back in the 80s, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's big. Yeah.
So I've known about consignment shops for a long time, and it's something my passion for
you
clothes.
Were in high school, you were like going to thrift stores and buying and consigning it? Like
No,
you were intentionally doing it? Or
no, my mother had a vintage booth in an antique mall. So we were always out looking, whether it was estate sales, yard sales, thrift shops, consignment shops. We were always on the hunt. Our specialty was vintage jewelry like Hobey, Trifari, things like that. So we were always out looking, and so I was always out hunting. But yeah, I started consigning my own things in the 80s when I had my first job at Lord & Taylor. It was part-time, and I realized I could buy something with my employee discount and sell it on consignment and make money, like even after they took their half.
Yeah,
I learned that very early on.
That's genius. Good for you. I never would have thought of that.
No, I didn't know. I didn't know, but I just sort of fell into learning about consignment shops. They've been around since the 40s. The first one is in New York called Michael's. Consignment's been around a very long time in reselling. We just didn't call it what we do now. But yeah, I've had a different career in charity fundraising, and on the side, I always was doing my love of clothes, my fashion as a shopper, as someone who wore fashion and loved fashion. My mother was very fashionable. And I found out about consignment shops very early, and about an organization called NARTS, N-A-R-T-S, which is the National Association for Resellers. And they specialize in working with brick and mortars, but over time they've expanded to online sellers as well. So it is the trade association for this group.
I have never heard of that in all of the interviews and people that I've watched and talked to. So do they, I mean, this is a whole different topic, but I'm going to ask it because it came up. Do they offer like insurance that you can buy into and like full-time benefits and stuff? Because a lot of the associations will do stuff like that.
They are not that advanced with it. They mostly offer regional and national conferences. They offer a newsletter, and they have a very active Facebook page. As a matter of fact, one of their president is online every day at 5 o'clock on Facebook to give us all the updates on the CARES Act and how it affects us as consignment shop owners. So they're very active that way, but they haven't taken it that far in terms of what you're talking about.
Are they? Someone's asking in the chat, so I want to spell it out. It's NARTS.
NARTS.org.
ORG. Okay.
Yeah, I remember.
So this is a completely different topic, but I'm interested in it. So you pay to get into the associate? Like, do you have fees?
It's a small fee. Yeah, it's a small annual fee. If you go on their website, they'll explain. It's a small annual fee to join. It's a professional organization. Sure.
Yeah. So then do they have, because so I'm a hairdresser by trade, and a lot of the hairdressing associations offer, because you're basically like, your own little employee, small business by yourself, but they offer, one of it is benefits, because a lot of times you don't have benefits, but do they offer like resources like lawyers or accountants, and not necessarily for free, but like that kind of resource?
They have a lot of resources, but again, they're specialized in businesses versus individuals, right? So if you're a shop owner, so people who have consignment software, people who have materials for the trade will advertise through this organization to get the word out. People have software, but not so much the health insurance. I can't say because I haven't read a newsletter lately, but they really specialize in things for brick and mortar. But when they do the conferences each year, that's when they get into social media and online and things like that. So it isn't as advanced as, say, some of these independent unions that are out there for like independent owners. It's a different type of organization, very beneficial. There's a lot of free content on their website, and they have a Facebook page. It's a members only, but it's worth looking into, definitely.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm taking notes. That's the first that I've heard of that. So that's really interesting. Yeah. What were we talking about? So you have been consigning since you were young, but you did charity work. So but you do full-time now, right? Like you are a shop owner full-time. Right. When did that happen?
So that happened about 5 years ago when I moved from New York City, where I lived for about 16 years, to Pasadena area. I met someone who I was reselling at the time, and not full-time, but I was reselling, and they couldn't understand why I had all this stuff in my apartment, and what was that about, and why don't I have a store if this is what I like to do? And I'm like, well, I can't, I always dreamed of having a store. I'd been in so many shops thinking maybe I could do something better. And they just sort of presented the opportunity to me. And I was at a point in my life where I said, well, why not? Let's give it a try. So I did. And my shop is called Walker Vidin Luxury Consignment. WalkerViden.com is the website. And we are on Instagram and online, and have the brick and mortar as well. So that business has been operating for 4 years as of June 1st. And
so I'm going to have you. I'm going to have you, when this is in the recording, after we're done, come back and you can put your links down in the comments, so people can directly link to all the things that you're talking about. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So you have been doing that for 4 years. Have you been selling online as well, or you strictly have been doing?
No, we've been online the entire time. As a matter of fact, it's the single most important thing we did in order not to fail, period. I knew about eBay and online selling because I've been an eBay seller since like 2003 or 2005. And when I was researching software for the consignment shop, I looked for the one who had an eBay integration. And we went with one called Liberty, with a company called Resale World. And they had the eBay integration. So we went with them from the first day. So from the first moment, we had professional software, and we had someone who could integrate with eBay. And so that is the most important thing that we did.
And so that software manages all of your inventory? Is that what the software is doing? And your consignment, like tracking all of that?
Absolutely. It tracks everything. Because the thing about consignment is tracking. And so in the old days, people tracked it by hand on a little 4x6 card, right? They wrote it down, and they did all the hand calculations, which is fine to do, right? If you have like one consigner or two consigners, no big deal. But when you have hundreds or thousands of people consigning with you, you have to rely on technology, because you could have different consignments percentages for different types of things. So the computer does all of that for you. It breaks out your percentages, It breaks out how much to pay the consignor and you can do your check out of your system. It's very, very efficient.
So you can pay from that system as well.
Absolutely.
So do they have different packages levels? Because I'm thinking like you're a big store, so you probably have like a lot of consigners, but you know, a lot of my channel is like smaller people, you know, maybe they'll have 1, 2, 5, 10 consigners. Will they have something?
No, they don't really break their tiers out by number of consigners because it's the same process whether you have 1 consignor or 100. Yeah. You know, the technology is the technology, right? And so it's just something to look at. There are a number of consignment softwares that are out there. They're not the only one. There's one called Consign Pro. There's probably 4 or 5. And this organization, ARTS, can certainly refer to you to a number of consignment softwares. If you search online, consignment softwares, they will pop up. They do exist. A lot of them are out there, and you should definitely look into it in terms of getting into it in a big way. But if you're just starting out, you don't need the software yet, right? You can do it by hand. It's just something. You can calculate it by hand, and you can cut your own checks and things like that. But there's a lot more to consignment than that.
Yes, and that's what we're going to get into. Okay. I do have one question. So you're just starting out. At what point do you think getting the software to manage and track things, like how many consigners do you think would be worth it? Like 10, 20, 100, 1,000?
Well, for an individual that didn't have a storefront who just wanted to try this on the side, I would say you could easily handle 50 people on your own. But if you're going to get more than that, you better get some software. You also better have a consignment contract. There's a legal part to this as well. And you all probably need to look at forming some sort of entity, because at the end of the day, it's all about protecting yourself and from liability. And all you have to do, and there's a million free templates, you can get one from NARTS or online, of a consignment contract and what it should say. And if you don't have a way to do that, you can sign with someone locally and you'll get a copy of their contract, and you can see. Some are very detailed, some are not. The bottom line is your contract needs a date, it needs a timeline, and it needs a percentage, right? So, and when you're going to pay them. And it's really not complicated, but it's a necessary piece of paper so that everyone knows what you're doing, how much you're paying, and when you're paying, right?
Yeah, so let's get into, I mean, everyone's going to have different outcomes that they want of those, but you've been doing this. So what do you, like, what kind of different models do you have for consigning? Different, you know, timeline, like what does it typically look like if someone was going to come consign with you? What would they be signing up for, and what would you recommend?
Well, we have changed our timeline over the years, and when we first started, I'm laughing at all the mistakes I made in the beginning. When I first started, I'm like, oh, you know, let's do a year. You know, we want to take our time to get just the right buyer for the item. And that's because I was thinking like a pure reseller. I was not thinking like a consignment owner. It's a very different model, right? Because consignment shops live off of cash flow. And when you're looking at cash flow to pay your consigners, to pay your rent, and to turn all of that, you don't really have the luxury to hang out indefinitely for that one person to pay you a premium for one item. You really can't do that. So in the beginning, I had everything wrong. The pricing was wrong. The timeline was wrong. But we redefined it over time to, we did it for 6 months. We did it for 3 months. I think 3 months, 6 months, a year. And now we're back to 6 months contract. And the reason is you need enough time to process the item and enough time to market it. And you're looking at a global audience because you're online, right? So you have customers all over the world. If you have a platform that goes all over the world, such as an eBay versus a PoshMark only goes to US and Canada, right? So you have customers that are in hot and cold weather at all times, 24/7, right? So you need enough time to market those items out into the world. And what I learned is that, you know, it takes a minute for people to find you. There's a glut of inventory right now. I mean, this COVID-19 has definitely changed everything about how much inventory is online, and all these sites are reporting almost 50% increases in a month in the number of items, the number of sellers. That means your items are buried in hundreds and hundreds of millions of listings, right? Yeah, and so it takes a minute to find your item, right?
Especially depending on what you do. So I know a lot of your pieces are more specialized, so you may have less competition, but for people that are doing, you know, citizens of humanity jeans, like, okay, you have a gazillion of those out there right now, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, it's a blessing and a curse, you know, to have something that people are looking for and then there's too much of it. But what I find in consignment is the same stuff sells all the time for everybody, right? It's the same thing. I don't care if you're my store, a one-person consigner, or a big chain like The Real. What's selling every day is Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, you know, Golden Goose. Like there's a top 5 or 10 brand to every platform at every time. So anything Chanel will sell, I don't care what it is or what condition it is, it's gone really fast. And so the question becomes, how do you keep in that much inventory? How do you take it in order to consign it and feed the beast that is never fully satiated, right? And so that's a whole different issue about what to consign, right?
Well, so yeah, that's my question. That was something I wrote down here is, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's worth it to consign lower end items, right? So focusing on getting some of those higher end items to consign, because you're paying for a software, you're paying a % of your fees, you're paying, you know, so you need to have high average sale price items, right?
What we did was we over time came up with a minimum. That's something we need to be able to price it at least $100 to take it into the store. And the reason is it costs the same amount of money to price something you set for $100 or $1,000, right? So in terms of, there's too much inventory for anyone to handle. And that's why consignment is such a great way to get inventories. There's so much out there. We can't handle it. We can't. There's only 3 or 4 shops in Pasadena, and people literally come to us. They're like, the other one said they're closed. They're not taking anything. And then they come to us and we're like, well, we're full too, right? So there's a glut. And so what the art in consignment is the curation of what you're selling. It is no different than when you go outsourcing, right? Is because the amount of stuff that's coming in is overwhelming, right? And just like any other place, you can say, only bring me your best stuff, and you're still going to get things that are dated, stained, ruined, just not in good condition. I mean, I have seen, you name it, I've seen it. And so it doesn't change because it's consignment, because everyone's interpretation of what luxury is different, right?
Or what's good condition, because you get on Facebook and everyone's like, excellent used condition, and then you get it and you're like, no.
That's my favorite. My favorite reseller is watching a reseller goes, these are in really good condition, like the thing's completely worn out. And you're like, okay, compared to something completely destroyed, yes, it's in really good condition. But in luxury consignment, which is what we are all about, I turn away Louis Vuitton. I turn it away all the time because it's completely worn out. There is a market for that. I don't want to be the one. I don't want to be the one. I don't want to be the one to sell it, right?
Yeah, because it's your brand too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we're luxury consignment, so everything in our store is pristine. It looks like people go, is this stuff used? Like they're confused, right? They don't know. We don't understand at first look in our boutique store, first that it's consignment or that it's even used. And so many things have tags on it. So we differentiate ourselves by only taking the very best and doing our best to get it sold. And if you're going to say how do you rate us as a consignment shop, right? Did we get it sold? At what price point? Did we get it sold at all? There are things that do not move at any price for our store, just like anyone else. So in terms of consignment, consigning yourself as a reseller, absolutely. In terms of you getting inventory from consignment shops, that's a really good avenue, because according to the contract, every contract is different, is what do I do with the stuff that didn't sell, right? My contract tells me what I have the right to do. Do I have the right to take ownership of it at the end of the contract or not? If I do, I can do whatever I want with it, which then means I can then sell it to a reseller. I can sell it to a thread up. I can put it on a reel. I can donate it to charity. What does my contract say I can do with the stuff? So people looking for inventory, consignment shops are a great place to find it and to source it and to talk to your local shops, because it is a problem. It's a problem, the amount of inventory that comes in that's either rejected, you have to get rid of it, you have to donate it because of the rules, right? If I don't take it, I have to donate and get a receipt. There's no choice. If it doesn't sell, it's a different criteria based on the contract, what I can do with it. But at the beginning, if I don't take it and they don't want it back, it goes straight to the donation, right? So,
so then they have a fluctuation of stuff that maybe isn't as good
Absolutely.
enough for you, but for other resales might be, and
Yeah,
they can't do anything.
Like we turn away brands that would do really well on Poshmark all the time because we don't want to take them in anymore. We don't want to take in Lilly Pulitzer. We don't want to take in BCBG. We don't want to take in, you know, all kinds of brands that are sellable and have a market. We just can't do it, right? So then it becomes a challenge, you know. If you're holding out for the good stuff, then you've got to, you know, keep your standards up and turn away a lot of stuff. So I send people to other shops. I send people to Crossroads. I send people all kinds of places because everyone who approaches a consignment shop, you know, they think we are like a Buffalo Exchange or something. They think we're going to pay them cash up front, and we don't operate with that model. You get paid after it sells on a payment cycle. It's cash flow, right?
Yeah. So you're not buying it. Because like Buffalo Exchange, are they technically a consignment shop, or they're
no, they buy it. No, they buy it from you. They don't consign. So a lot of people who we turn away their things, I then refer them to other places that might want to buy it. And then people come in trying to sell to us. I'm like, we don't buy. Let me refer you to someone who would sell. But then sometimes they approach us with luxury handbags, like, here's my Chanel, here's my Louis Vuitton, I want to sell it. I don't want to consign it. Are you interested? Right. So then you have that dynamic too. But there's a lot of inventory going through consignment shops of every caliber. And there's a lot of reasons people don't take things in. And there's a lot of obligation to move it out of your store if it doesn't sell.
Yeah, because if something's been sitting in your store for 6 months and you can't sell it, you only have so much room, right? And so you want to get it out the door to get better stuff in, right?
Exactly. You know, it's all about turning the inventory. Absolutely.
Right. So what happens, I mean, in your guys' contracts, if something doesn't sell in 6 months, you give it back to them, or what?
Well, we have changed our language we've changed it over the years. And it became very problematic to get things back to people. They would not come and get it. They wouldn't come and get it. They say they want it back, but they will not. You can
6 months has gone by and they've just forgot about it.
6 months. You can call them. You can hassle them today. You can do everything. Okay, it's Friday at noon. Like, you try all kinds of things, and it just got to be too much work. And so the contract language has changed, and it's like, you need to pick it up by this date. You have 2 weeks after that date. If we do not hear from you, do not get it. It becomes ours to do what we want with. Period. If they have in advance chosen a donation model, then we will donate at the end of the contract and give them a charity receipt. So everyone doesn't want to do that. They're just like, I don't care what you do with it. That's one scenario. The other scenario is donated at the end of the contract. That's a different scenario. So you have to look at the contract. And then you have to donate it. So now you're donating like high end. Yes. They love us at Out of the Closet because that's where we donate everything here in Pasadena, is Out of the Closet.
Yeah.
So
is that a nonprofit? Or what is that?
Yeah, if you should definitely look them at Out of the Closet. It's like a Savers or a Goodwill. It's really, really cool because their mission is to work with AIDS, and it's just a thrift store that gets all kinds of cool merchandise, and you should definitely check it out for sourcing. Definitely.
Are they online?
Absolutely. No, they don't sell online. They have a little.
I'm in Colorado.
No. Yeah, that's a shame.
Well, if you're in Pasadena, Out of the Closet is where it's at. So
Out of the Closet. They're definitely in California. There's some in New York as well. So there are a number around the country. So definitely look them up. Yeah, well, there's a lot of cool places to source. Consignment, consignment has certain components to it, right? So one, you need a contract that explains what you're going to pay. So a lot of times there's a range in our contract. So if we sell something over, say, $5,000, you get more percentage than, say, something under $5,000, but over $2,000 or $2,000 to like $500. You know, there's different ranges, right? Usually, like Chanel handbags, if it's an Hermes, something very expensive, we're going to take less of a percentage. If it's different price point, will take more of a percentage. In consignment, the general rule for a long time was 50-50 consignment split regardless. This was before the last 5 years. This is before the Real, before ThreadUp, before all of these apps came out, right? This is a typical consignment model, 50-50. A lot of that has changed. Now you will see people offer as little as 40%, like The Real does that online, but like 40% in the shop. They'll pay 50% on higher things, but like it really depends because it's so competitive now. So if you're too restrictive and only offering 40, you might cut yourself out of some consigners because they can get 50% down the street. So why are they going to get 40 from you? Well, they might take 40 from you if you're getting more for your item. And so they
have that relationship.
Sure. And we do really well at getting a lot of money for stuff. And, we will sell things that other people will sell for half as much. And a lot of that has to do with knowing your merch. And that's a different podcast, is things we sell for $1,000 pair of pants.
Well, I already have like 4 other things, so I'm sure I'll have you back on.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. What comes through there. And really, I would love to do a show on how to sell things for $1,000 or more. I mean, I've become expert on that. And it has to do with knowing what stuff is. And I see all the time resellers that are very excited about selling something for $100. It sells for $1,000 in my store. And I'm like, you don't know what you have, which is a different show.
What you do, I'm leaning towards you just have to kind of wait it out and market it, right? Like a lot of times you'll get an offer that's really low and you're like, okay, I'll take it. But what are you, I mean, I know it's a whole different show, but like a quick tip on how you get.
Wait, a quick tip on what?
How you get items to sell, like I sell it for 100 and you're like, oh, I can sell that for 1,000. Like, what are you doing to get it?
First of all, I priced it at $1,000, number one. Okay. And that's, people don't know. I'm a reseller as well as a consignment shop owner. And I myself didn't know. It's taken me the last 5 years to understand what's valuable, as in auction quality, a Christie's, a Sotheby's, a firstdibs.com kind of item. We've had them in our store and I didn't know it.
So just learning your merchandise.
Right. Oh, actually, instead of $100, I'll price it $600. It's sold in 5 seconds because it's worth $1,500 or it's worth $2,000 or it's worth $5,000 to the right person, right? The rare, the super collectible, the things that have been, shown in museums. I mean, there's a whole other show is how to identify this stuff that's so valuable. And, it is a crime for someone not to know what something is with the internet. I mean, there's no reason not know how valuable something is. And in terms of how we price in a consignment shop, we don't go to PoshMark and look at comps. We look at the original retail price and we look to see if it's rare, collectible, vintage, has a history, it's iconic. And how does that happen? Because a celebrity wears it, or like Alexander McQueen, is the things that were when he was alive, for example, that are more valuable. Thierry Mugler, they just did a huge exhibit in England, London, England, with Thierry Mugler. If you've never heard of that brand, you don't know, but Gaultier, Jean-Paul Gaultier no longer does ready to wear. So he's only doing couture. So all of his stuff is really hot right now. So you have to know what's hot in fashion, the higher end, and it just takes time to learn it. But anyone with an internet connection can know.
Yeah, it's just hard too because you get, and there is a lot that you can learn on the internet, but there's also a lot of misconception on the internet too, and not knowing, because you will see that same price pot, for $100 somewhere, and you're like, well, which one is the real one? And is this person being outrageous? And it's closer to $100. And until you're like to your level where you're like, okay, I know the value of my items. People who like, I've never seen a Louis Vuitton in real life. I don't think. I'm thinking, no, maybe once. But this is stuff that you're seeing all the time, right? So you're like, oh, like this is what it is. But for people who aren't, I think it can be kind of hard on the internet because there's a lot of, when you look up other things, like vintage is hard too, because someone will price vintage at, or a lot of vintage, they'll put vintage on, you look at Etsy and they're like, this is vintage. And I'm like, well, that's not vintage. Yeah,
but that's not the word. That's not the place to go though. Okay.
Yeah.
You can't go to Etsy for your vintage knowledge. You have to go to the Fashion Institute. You have to go to the Fashion Museum. You have to study the different sources to understand what makes something valuable and what makes it iconic and why. Like all you have to do is go to firstdibs.com. First Dibs spelled with a 1. Firstdibs.com. Search Vivian Westwood, and you will see bustiers come up priced as high as $15,000, $20,000. And these are bustiers that get sold on eBay, Vestiaire Collective, anywhere. They get sold all the time. I saw one sell for $50 the other day because I get the alerts, and I was crying because I know what it's worth. But I've seen them. They come up and it's the one tip I'll give you. It's the one brand that sells immediately, any bustier of any condition at any time frame. They just did this huge exhibit in England of Vivienne Westwood. And so this is iconic. That's why if someone's selling it for $1,000, you should buy it because you can sell it for 10 or 15. You have to understand what it's worth, right? So that's you might see $1,000 and go, that is so much money for a bustier. Well, that's because it's worth 10 or 15. How do you know that? Go on firstdibs.com and look at this stuff. Look what they're asking. This is a micro niche of people who are willing to pay a premium for stuff. And so playing to that person and then like steps down for people who are willing to pay a premium. And those people are the same people who bought on the sale rack in the expensive stores, right? So if I went to Bergdorf Goodman, Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, I'm paying, have you looked at these prices? I can pick up a blouse for $2,000, right? So when it gets on when it gets on the sale rack, it's $500. That's a deal, right? For the person who pays full price. And the person who's paying $500 for that blouse in my shop paid $1,000 or $1,500 new for it in the store. It's not the person,
so they feel like they're getting a deal.
It's not the aspirational person who has never paid over $100 for a blouse, right? It's not the same customer, and it takes a while to figure out who these people are and who's willing to pay what, and people
and how to market them. So your eBay store, well, and your brick and mortar store, you're marketing to that specific customer, and so I think you're probably getting like someone who has a closet full of, you know, mall brands or whatever, and then they have this one item, probably isn't going to be able to sell it as well as your whole entire store. And you have,
right? It's context. It's the context. I see things all the time. I look to see if someone has a piece of Moschino, which you'll see behind me.
Yes, which is amazing.
One of my vintage, hard to find. That if I see that in a closet of, first of all, it wouldn't be there because it'd be gone so fast. But if I saw it in a closet of someone who had like Levi's and whatever, looked like they got things from estate sales, I'm like, they don't know what this is. I'll make them an offer, that kind of thing. But it's not going to sell as well at the high price in that environment. This is the thing. You have to create an environment of luxe in order to sell at a higher price. So consignment is really good for that. And so we have the in-store, which is like a luxury boutique. You know, it's got beautiful hangers and fixtures and fitting rooms. And it's, you know, people have no idea it's a consignment shop. And our name does not say we're a consignment shop. Walker Biden, what's that, you know? But when you're in a different, and it tricks the mind, right? In that environment, you know, people pay thousands of dollars for things all the time. But if I'm walking through Goodwill or I'm walking through a consignment shop that is not luxury, my brain will not let me do that. You know, I'm thinking at a different tier of what makes sense in that context.
Right. Well, and then you also have to wonder like what it is, and like there's a whole different level. Someone is asking, would you say your longest contract is 6 months?
It is now. Depending on what you're trying to do, you could do longer, like a year. Like the Real does a 1 year, but it has to do with space issues and always having fresh merchandise in the store, right? So if you've got stuff hanging around a year, it better be an iconic handbag or something. You don't want everyday pieces sitting around a year because you don't have the space for it, and customers expect new stuff. So 6 months, I think, is a good timeline. You can get through you can get through hot weather and cold weather in 6 months.
That's right.
And I think that gives you ample time to get it processed, priced, and out into the world.
Do you have like in your contract, it will be up on eBay within this amount of time? Because I feel like as someone who is consigning, I'm like, oh, I'm going to give you 6 months. And if it takes you 5 months to actually put it up, right? If you're like slow.
No, it doesn't state it that way. What it does say is processing time in general, because we put on eBay first. The minute it does not hit the floor, it's simultaneous, right? So we process it for eBay. We take the photos, I put measurements, we put it online, we push it out, then it hits the floor, right? So it's a matter of processing time in general, not about selling online specifically.
But processing in general.
It's just something that we do. So yeah, I mean, you don't want to get backlogged. And you want to help mitigate the expectation, because if they know you're not going to get to it for a month, they're not going to be looking for a check from you in a month, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. That's
later.
kind of what I'm thinking.
And people, quite honestly, consign for a lot of reasons, but mostly they want the money. So when they get that check, makes a difference, and they'll call you. Is anything sold? What's going on with my stuff? So they definitely want to do that.
Especially if these people are bringing you nice pieces and you do a good job, then you're building that relationship, and they're probably going to continue. The season's over. I don't want this, this is an outdated whatever. I want the new season stuff. And now they have a relationship with you. So it's a good way to build that relationship and have good inventory continuing to come to you, right?
Absolutely. Relationship building is key to repeat consigners. And repeat consigners with us tend to be the ones where we actually sold something. And they got a nice check and they saw the results. Usually once people get the first check, they start looking again for items, especially if they haven't tried you before, because everything will not sell with us per se, right? The way we curate, what we choose for the store. We make mistakes. We take in things. I mean, people work really hard for you to take their stuff, and I'm a softie, and not anymore. But at the time, I'm like, okay, I'll take it in. And then it doesn't sell. And then they're disappointed. I'm like, well, don't you remember you worked for 30 minutes for me to say yes to this thing I told you I couldn't sell?
Yeah, that's a valid point. Right? Yeah, you have to know. You are the expert in it, not them. And this is where it's hard and why I don't even like taking donated things, or people like, hey, will you buy my inventory or my closet for me? Because they're attached to it, right? They're, they bought this at the store and they saved all their money, or there's always a story behind all of your pieces. And so they have a lot more attachment to it than the business does.
Yeah, absolutely. Women, we can tell you where we bought it, what we paid, if we had a good time when we wore it, if we were photographed in it. We can give you the history, date, and time of every item. That is definitely a problem when it comes time to sell it. And if they're attached to it, you will know at the beginning. Yeah. And now, I mean, you learn a lot about human behavior and female behavior with clothes, people attached to it. So like when you get things that are from an estate, you don't have that kind of thing. When you get something from someone who's really not sure, I've learned to just say, well, you know what, if I can't get it back, so if you're not sure, don't give it to me, right? Because I sell it, it's it. But
it's a done deal.
But consignment is a super great way, to get inventory and really good stuff. And the hardest part really is saying no to things. And I find, but after this 3-month hiatus, I have a new strength. It's like we don't have time to take anything that isn't amazing anymore, like at all. Like sell it yourself, because with everything that we're struggling with to get through this situation we've been in, we can't afford to make mistakes like that. We can't afford to take in 30 pieces and spend the time processing them that aren't going to sell.
Time is money. Yes,
absolutely. And so I think for
and
people,
space is money too. Like all of us only have so much space. Sometimes it's, your studio apartment, and sometimes you have a big storage space, but still you have a limitation, and taking stuff that's not going to sell is just eating up that space that something else could be in, right?
Absolutely. So I want to go into this part of it. So when we consign from our store, we are selling on multiple platforms, right? So we want to reach the widest range of buyers as possible with if you sell it for someone, they will give you more, right? To see that you're successful at it. And so if you're professional about it, you have a contract, you are an entity, you've given them a receipt for everything they left with you. You do it professionally, you write it on you do everything the way you're supposed to do it. And then you get it sold is really key. And so for people, like we are on multi-platforms. We're on PoshMark, StockX, Grailed, Lapri, Vestiaire Collective. We are adding Etsy. We're doing more with Etsy, Depop. And our goal is to be on every single platform that exists. So we're working now to do the new Facebook stores, to be on Instagram. We're working behind the scenes to get all that. Yeah. Because the same people who buy on PoshMark, they seem to buy different things than on eBay. It's a different audience, it's a different customer. First of all, it's a global. And the most important thing to realize about PoshMark versus eBay is a global audience. You can sell almost to every country around the world. And brands play differently in different countries, right? So people who have a lot of, say, like H&M collaboration, H&M for Balmain or H&M for whomever, that H&M stuff sells a lot overseas. I'm always shipping it out to a foreign country because these things were highly promoted and highly sought after, and people still want them today. And you can get more money for things that are rare. And, you know, if you're on a platform that's global, Depop is global, Poshmark's becoming, you know, they're just not global yet. They're just too new, right? Etsy's global. So, you know,
and
it's
vintage,
really
I notice most of my vintage sells Etsy or eBay because it's global. A lot of my vintage sells to other countries.
Absolutely. So, but yeah, the consignment model is terrific. And, you know, in terms of how to get people to bring it to you if you haven't consigned before, I would start with people that you know.
Can you read my mind? I was literally like formatting that sentence because this is all good, but I'm thinking, and I'm sure a lot of the people on here watching are like, okay, cool. Like she has all these people coming to her, but at one point you didn't. And so teach us how you got people, like how you marketed, how you got what you said to get people to come to you.
Absolutely. Well, my first consigner as a reseller was someone that I met when I was working part-time at Bloomingdale's in Beverly Center, who was a stylist who happened to be in there, and we got to talking. That was it. And so because he was a stylist, and he was very fashionable in his own right, he had tons of stuff. And so I did my contract, and I was working from home, and he was my first consigner, and I sold a $7,000 Louis Vuitton bag for him, you know. So this is it's word of mouth. It's building a relationship. I would, if it were me starting right now, I would speak to everyone that I know, all my girlfriends. I'd say, hey, what do you have that I can consign for you? This is my price. So, for example, for someone who wants to consign someone on, say, a Poshmark, and they want to sell it there, maybe that's your platform. You can say, okay, I'm going to pay you 50% of the selling price after fees, right? So you sell something for $100. Poshmark takes $20. You're left with $80. You split the 80, 50-50. You get 40, they get 40. That's sort of one model that's out there, right? And so it's not hard to calculate something like that. And plus that way the fee is equally distributed between you as the consignor and the consignee, right? So yeah, it's word of mouth. And once you do well for one person, they start bringing you people.
Yes, for sure.
The other thing too is you can offer incentives. You can say, I'll give you 10% finder's fee. You can incentivize, you know, you have all these affiliate programs out there. All it is a finder's fee, right? You can do the same thing in consignment. We don't do it in the store, but you know, you could offer 10% or you could offer a flat fee. I mean, a lot of online platforms do that, like Real offers a flat fee if you bring them a consigner. Some people, depending on their structure, absolutely be like, yeah, if you know anybody, I'll give them 10% of whatever or I'll give you a flat X amount of dollars. So,
well, yes. And the person who's consigning Louis Vuitton with you probably has friends who also have Louis Vuitton. Like they're likely hanging out with the same type of people, right? Like I'm not hanging out with people that have Louis Vuitton. I do have a question on that. And not everyone's going to do, you know, high-end luxury type pieces. I do think the more that I'm talking to you as well, it makes sense to have higher end items. If you're doing it for $10 and then you split the profit and then you're making $1, right? Well, so you do need to, you need to figure out how much your time is worth and what value you want to do there. But it's likely going to be higher priced items, maybe not super high like you, but on that note, how do you guys authenticate stuff? Do you do it in-house or because that's kind of the scary part for some of the higher end stuff as well.
I can understand that. I've become expert. I'm not an expert, but I've become expert at authenticating. Now, the reason I'm good at it is because I spent a lifetime of buying luxury myself. I myself am a consumer of luxury and have been for like my whole life. Had my first Louis Vuitton handbag in high school with my mom, and I bought them in Atlanta one weekend, you know. So I've always been around it. But the key is I mean, I recently had a ton of fakes come. I mean, we get a lot of fakes in the store, and usually they come in batches, and it's my badge of honor when I get to look them in the eye and be like, I'm unable to authenticate this. And they're like, what are you talking about? And they're all like, I don't know what you're talking about. And of course they do. So there's a lot of fakes, but there are instruments you can buy, you know, there's all these tools now that you can buy that will, you know, scan the skins and things like that. But
really?
Yeah, there's one called Erupti. I think it's called Erupti, and it's like a monthly service fee, and you buy this thing and it scans the skins and it tells you if it's a real Chanel or a real Louis Vuitton or any of that. Yeah, there's tools out there.
Oh, that's
Absolutely.
cool. I hadn't heard of that. You were just like a wealth of knowledge, girl.
Yeah, get you some Erupti. But we've talked to the rep. We thought about buying it, but I'm like, I've gotten so good at this. Do I want to do this? And we didn't actually buy the tool, but I've learned the hard way and the not so hard way about how to. It's the super fakes that are tough, right? But once you work with a couple of super fakes, you realize what makes them super fake, and then for the next time. But a lot of times we're like, you need to bring the receipt, you need to bring the authentic, you need to bring the packaging. Like all those things help you sell it at a premium and also helps you authenticate it. But I've seen fake bags and real dust bags. I've seen it all. The latest was the Alfred Chanel wallet I saw. It was horrendous. I'm like, really, Alfred Chanel? But it's out there. I've seen bad Balenciagas. That famous bag that they have, and like the hardware is just awful. I've seen
some bad fakes, and I feel like the bad fakes are pretty easy to pinpoint. Like you open it up and the lining's like crooked, and you're like, I'm pretty sure Chanel doesn't.
They don't do that. And what I've learned too is that usually if there's one fake, I don't take any, because they'll bury fakes with a real one. Like here's 5 bags, 1 will be real and 4 will be fake. So if there's one I'm questioned in a batch, I take none, and I tell them, I said, I'm unable to authenticate this based on this, so I'm not going to take any of these. And they're like, oh, what? But I've shocked many of people. But you have to do that, because I'd rather not have it than to have something that was off, and then I waste my time trying to. You have to do a lot of research on these bags, to make sure that they are authentic, right? You within like 30 seconds anyway, but just to be sure, there's all the extra steps you have to take. But if you're unsure, that's when, if you're not sure about in the beginning, it usually doesn't turn out to be real,
Right.
But don't be afraid of that. You can get an Erupti subscription. You can spend time at it. If you've got a luxury store around you, and if you haven't been in one, you really have to spend time around this stuff. And this is something I've talked about in my podcast that I have called Closet Conversations, is that a lot of people haven't been exposed to luxury. Okay, fine. Mm-hmm. Haven't been exposed to it. No big deal. You can learn quick. You can learn quick by going online to bergdorfgoodman.com, neimanmarcus.com, saksfifthavenue.com, Harrods. Go to these websites and look at this stuff, number one. See what it's priced. Then the other step is you got to physically touch it and feel it and be around it, right? You're either going to need to go to another consignment shop. You need to go to the luxury stores in your town. If you don't have one, you're going to have to find a way to touch and feel and smell this stuff, because once you do, and you can quickly tell. You memorize. It's knowledge that you've memorized, the quality, the stitching, the fabrics. Things, good quality stuff tends to be made in France. It's made in Italy. It's made in Europe. A lot of the fake clothes that are out there. I've seen Max Mara made in Taiwan. I'm like, Max Mara's made in Italy, right? Yeah. So D&G.
Yes, if something is like Taiwan or made in China, it's like, sometimes something weird happens, but like that's a pretty quick
So if you're not sure, don't take it in. But I don't think you have to jump from I'm selling H&M, I'm selling Louis Vuitton. Like there's a lot in between. Right. You can sell Vince in theory. And, if you're going to consign, there's plenty of brands people are looking for. Burberry, anything Burberry sells in 5 seconds, put that on the top of your list. And, you learn over time what people are looking for. Hard to sell. You want something hard to sell? Try to sell a Ferragamo flat shoe with a bow on it. I mean, that is a real specific person with a very narrow foot. Like it'll sit there for a year and then someone will buy it, right? So certain things sell really quickly, but in terms of consignment, the model really works. You okay, let's talk it through. You've formed an entity. You're Jenny.
So let me just specify this too. I mean, you've said that, but forming an entity is meaning you're taking liability. If something comes away from you and they want to sue you, they are suing the business and not you personally. So they cannot take your house, they cannot take, and when you are doing it for eBay, eBay takes on a lot of the liability. When you're doing it for PoshMark, PoshMark takes on, but now you're building a relationship outside of those entities. This is why I don't sell a lot on like Instagram and stuff, because there's not security. You have a little security with PayPal. But I just want to clarify that for the people that are watching, if you're going to do this building an entity, because now you're becoming more of a business and you're taking liability on, you don't want someone to come after your house or your savings, your retirement, whatever it is, right?
Well, yeah, and you're a Sarah Styles LLC, so I'm assuming you're an LLC, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you can do a DBA, but like really your safest bet is an LLC. And I don't want to scare people away from this in terms of if you're going to consign for your friends, right? If you got someone you trust, your sister, your neighbor, your cousin, your friend, no big deal. But as you grow in this, you've got to protect yourself and form some sort of entity, because it does protect you personally. But I don't want to scare people away from this. Just know that that's something that I've done. I've always had an LLC. Like I've had like 3 or 4 companies, all LLCs for whatever I was doing. And I always felt protected. And thank goodness
and it's
I've never been tested.
Yeah, I haven't either, but I did hair before on the side, which is why I did it. Because I was like, if I accidentally sniff your ear or something, like, and then I just kept it. But I will say, like, it sounds scary. It is not. I've talked about it on some of my other ones. And you can feel free to send me a DM. I'm not a pro by any means, but it is getting on the internet and paying, 10 to 100, depending on what state you live in, dollars. And that's it. Like, and maybe every once in a while they're like, hey, we want to update your information. It's not, it sounds scary, but it's not.
It's so easy. It is a couple of changes at tax time, but like, if you want to grow and do it and become full-time resellers, you have to think about what, these
as
things,
a business,
Right. But yeah, I mean, it's just smart to do. It's just a smart thing to do, is to protect yourself. But I don't want to frighten people from the whole consignment thought and the model, because you can work with people that work with family members, have the agreement. It's between you and them. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is they consigned a Chanel handbag with you and then something happens, right? Yeah. And I love what you said about not doing things like outside of the eBay ecosystem or PoshMark ecosystem, because that's one of the reasons why we love having these online platforms versus our own directly buying from us, because we do build in that layer of protection. Now you pay a fee, you're paying their fee, but
I will gladly play it.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they're also doing all the marketing for you too. Like eBay markets, eBay is paying Google to put your stuff at the top of the search. If I had Sarah Styles LLC website, which I do, and it gets no traffic, I don't try and sell stuff there. I have it for other reasons, but like I am very okay with doing a fee. I do want to ask a business question though about all of this taxes. So you're paying people, you're paying them out, so now they're becoming contractors essentially, right? Is that how how are you doing the taxes?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. A consigner is not a contractor. They get nothing at the end of the year because they're selling their personal items. Anyone is allowed to sell their personal clothes. They're not.
Oh, so you're not paying them as a contractor. They're basically just paying.
You just pay as a check. Absolutely, it's just a check.
That's good, because that's kind of scary to think about doing taxes and stuff.
No, for them, they get nothing from us for selling clothes because it's just their personal clothes, and anyone can like sell their stuff. It's free.
And the fee is basically just what you sell it for, not necessarily paying them for it. Okay, that makes sense. Right. That is helpful. Right. We do have a couple questions. Flipping Gals is asking, what was the most expensive item you've sold so far?
A $10,000 Hermes handbag made of lizard skin called a Constance.
Oh my God! Was it just like butter? Was it amazing? It sounds glorious.
And what we did to protect ourselves is that when it was an eBay sale, so I called eBay and I said, okay, we sold a $10,000 handbag. Now tell me what we need to do. We ended up spending $250 using UPS white glove delivery service. And you are totally protected, because like I don't want anything to go wrong with the $10,000 handbag.
Yeah, right.
So we did that, and then we get a note from UPS. they can't find the bag.
Oh my
But,
God, seriously?
but someone had signed for this thing, and then they found it, and it was great. We got positive feedback, but like it did make my heart leap for a minute. Yeah, you just use like you just use a service that's going to protect you. You have to protect yourself and not be afraid to sell an expensive item, because that's what the systems are for. But yeah, $10,000 handbag. We're hoping to top that with something more expensive, but we were quite excited. So thank you, Flipping Gals, for asking.
Yeah, they actually have another question. And if you guys don't follow Flipping Gals on Instagram, they have lots of really good content over there. Definitely. I'm going to let them say it in the chat, but some places it's Flipping Gals and some places they're the Flipping Gals. So when you're searching for them, make sure. But is storage a concern when you do consignment? And I know we chatted a little bit about this and being careful on what you pick up, but how many items do you, like, how does the storage work?
I met the Flipping Gals at PoshMark last year in Arizona. Yay!
Oh, did you? How fun. I didn't go. It was my birthday weekend and my son's birthday weekend. And
oh, well, it was my first Posh Fest, so it was a lot of fun. It was fun to meet them. So storage, yes, storage, Flipping Gals is an issue. We have limited space, but one way you can save space is smaller hangers and things like that. Sure, storage is an issue. Protecting yourself is an issue. Security, insurance, we have a store, we have an alarm system, we have insurance, we have all those things. If I didn't have a store, for my reselling, which I have, my home showroom, my home studio, I have insurance, and it's all covered. So if anything were to happen, so absolutely you should have storage space for the items. You need to physically take possession of them. You need to move them away from the consignor and in your possession. And then the prudent thing to do is make sure you have insurance. It's not that expensive. It's really, really not expensive to have insurance to protect if something happens.
Yeah, and that's true too, because if something happens to your inventory, you're just out. But now if you're taking on other people's inventory, but if you do it out of your house, depending on your homeowners, if you own your home, depending on.
Well, here, let me add this in. In your contract, you have to say what happens if it's stolen or lost, right? If it's lost or stolen, or earthquake or whatever. In the contract, always says we're not responsible. Period. We're not responsible for theft, for fire, for earthquake, for anything. We're not responsible. So that is something that would be part of the contract. Is that you would say who's responsible if something happens. So definitely, when you're thinking about consignment, you need to get generic copies of consignment contracts off the web from other stores in your area. They're out there. From NARTS can help you with a consignment contract, because you need to see how to protect yourself. And absolutely, everyone, we got to the point where it's like, we're not responsible, and we say on our website, you need to check to see if your homeowners will cover it. All homeowners insurance will not cover when it's physically out of your possession. Some will. So we put that on our website. And we've had people who had estate things, and they were very, very specific about asking us how the coverage was if something were to happen. So it's a legitimate, if you're taking possession of something that someone owns,
especially
that is consignment. Now,
the stuff that you're selling.
The good news is you didn't have to buy the inventory. So if I'm selling, it's pure profit. You did something. You took it in, you created a listing, you put it online, you marketed
your
it,
time.
You do something. Your time is valuable. But in the end of the day, if it doesn't sell, you haven't spent any money on dead inventory. You just give it back or you donate it.
For right now, I've considered this right now because our thrift store inventory, that was a hair, not a bug. Just so you guys know. I saw the way it looked. It was a hair.
We'll both fiddle with our hair, right?
Yeah, it must have just fallen out. I felt it. What was I gonna say? Oh, inventory. So I haven't done it in the past because I'm like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to track it. I don't want to, but it is so hard right now to find inventory. And it's, like you said, a win-win in the sense of you're not spending any money on it, right? You're spending the time. And I think that's where it's important. Like you've mentioned, find a value. Like I wrote in a whole notes, like Somebody knows. But that's, find what your time is worth and then say, okay, I'm only taking items that will sell for this amount. And so you're not getting people. And I think if you put out wherever you're going to put it, but your expectations, it makes it a lot easier than to have people come in and then you have to, at least for me, it's harder to like face to face tell them no, as opposed to like, this is what I'm expecting. And then you don't apply if it doesn't, if it's not that, right?
I'm exhausting. It's hard to look someone in the eyes and tell them what you need to tell them, but I do somehow. But yeah, you just got to be honest. And I'm to the point now where like someone had come in and they were, it was a whole thing about what the stuff that didn't sell and we donated it and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, where is it? Is it? Well, the contract says, we donate it. And they're like, well, I'm really surprised you weren't able to sell everything. And I said, well, I told you when you brought it in that you you were convincing me to take it in when I knew I couldn't sell it. So it didn't sell and therefore it got donated. So
do you ever get people that are mad when it doesn't sell? Like, they're like, oh, this should have sold for so much more than it did.
Very rarely. Most people are happy. I mean, they're getting rid of stuff they're not using. It's very rare. And we try, and we've learned on the front end to go over the pricing. And what we do is that we tell them we are responsible for pricing, but if there's something you're concerned about, you need to let me know. Like if it's a Chanel handbag or something really expensive, that's where people are concerned. They really don't care about anything else. Their regular clothes. They're happy to get $10 if they're lucky, right? So they really don't care. The only issue is if it's something of real value. That's where people want to know up front, and we will say, okay, I'm going to research it and get back to you on the price. If you think it's something you can't accept, you have to live with it. The key thing too also is that we have a markdown system, and so if you're going to consign, you have to let people know that over a 6-month period, it's going to get marked down, right? So I'm taking it in. Let's say I'm taking it at $1,000. By the end of that contract, it should be 65-75% off if it doesn't sell. So that $1,000 item can by my contract sell for anything, but sell for $250, and then you get a half of that, right? So you have to manage expectations. Pricing is really an issue. You don't want to overprice. You don't want to underprice. It's like an art,
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, things get marked down. But very, very rarely are people unhappy with their check. It's just so rare. It does happen, and when it does, it really stands out, and you're like, well, let's talk it through, let's come up with a solution. So that's kind of how you handle that.
Well, this was amazing, and I feel like we could talk for hours, which on lots of other things. I wanted to get in. I want you to move your head just for a minute so we can look at that vintage Shano. Yes, yeah, I know it's hard to know which side. It is absolutely gorgeous, and she has some really amazing stuff on her Instagram as well. So definitely make sure to follow her over there. It says Jenny Walker. It is Jenny's Closets.
Jenny Girl's Closet.
Jenny, thank you.
Jenny Girl's Closet.
I was gonna say Finds, but that's Lori Boston Finds. Is another YouTuber that I follow, and I mix you guys together. But when this comes, it usually takes a few minutes to process. But when it's the recording, if you want to come back and put all of your whatever contact and links that you want in the comments down below so people can contact you. And are you okay if people contact you on Instagram if they have questions about any?
Sure. Okay. I am everywhere. I am JennieGirlCloset on Instagram. We also have my consignment shop. We'll start with that. Is Walker Viden Luxury Consignment. We have Instagram, website, and then online. So you can contact me that way or through JennieGirlCloset, which is on Instagram and also on PoshMark, eBay, and a bunch of other platforms. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I'll be happy to direct you as best I can. I also have a podcast, Closet Conversations, which is on iTunes. I hope you would subscribe to, because it's all about reselling content and consignment shop content. And also have a YouTube channel, Jennie Girl's Closet, where hopefully I'll get Sarah on there. Now that I've done one of these live things, like I'm always so nervous to do this.
Oh yeah, it wasn't so bad. We just start talking, right? And then you forget you're on air. Yeah.
My whole thing is that like I totally like got all prepped. I did my hair, but it's like I had to turn the air conditioning off so I could hear you. So now it's like I watch you get melt and wilt. I'm like this wilting flower on camera, right?
It's fine. I go from this is real life, and sometimes I have time to put a little lipstick on it, and sometimes I'm like, oh crap, we just finished dinner and I'm going live in 5 minutes, so here I am. And it's thankful that it is virtual and you can't tell that I'm in sweatpants and have not showered yet today. That is the benefit of being on YouTube. I do want to give people, if anyone else has any last minute questions on here, definitely, like she said, you can reach out. If you're watching this in the recording, feel free to leave comments down below. I probably cannot answer any questions that you're going to have about this about this YouTube, but I'll make sure that Jenny gets it, or I will make sure that you have our information to contact her on Instagram. If you like content like this, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification so you get notified when I have new content or when I am going live. I am going live tomorrow with Chris from A Daily Refinement. We are doing a weekly mentorship. He's mentoring me. I am not mentoring him. He is mentoring me on how to make $1,000 net a week reselling in 20 hours or less. So there's lots of really good information and tips that come out of those. So make sure to follow me tomorrow, 6:30 for that. That is a mouthful. If anyone else has questions, and I do love shameless self-promotion. So if you are in the chat or you're watching this in a recording, definitely feel free to leave your closet, your Instagram handle, your YouTube. This is a community. I put Duncan says I mentor Chris. No, that's not it. This is a community. I put in the work to be on YouTube, but it's about everybody. So leave your stuff below, connect with others. Jenny, I want to thank you so much. I am probably going to send you a couple questions, personal questions that I have after this. You totally piqued my interest. On a lot of this.
Absolutely. I'm here to be a resource for anybody with any questions. You know, I've probably forgotten 100 things, and you know, what are you going to do? I'll answer them later as you think of them. You know, just be in touch.
No, I think this was very thorough, and I think you went into very good detail. Enough detail that gets people thinking, but not so much that you're like, that seems really overwhelming, and I like not too micro to where it's like, okay, I'm not there yet, but kind of piquing a lot of people's interest on, is this a model that I may consider in my business? It's hard right now. Yeah, it's hard to
give it a try. Absolutely, should give it a try with all that's going on with the inventory shortages. So definitely give it a try. You don't have much to lose.
Yeah, and if people come to me, I'm enjoying that. It like frees up hours of your time.
We didn't even talk about that. They bring it to you.
And it's good stuff. Yeah,
it's good stuff. And then you get to go through it and pick out. That's the art, is picking out the good stuff and keep reminding yourself that there's always more, right?
Yeah,
and not be afraid to turn things away.
Yeah, and I think especially as you start, you want to be able to build your brand and make it so that they want to come back. And so being honest, while it can be hard, being honest, if you tell them you're going to sell everything, something that's not realistic, and then it doesn't happen, you're going to disappoint them. What is the saying where you overshoot or set low expectations? And
this is a really important point. I really want to speak. I know you're trying to wrap up, but like this is the most important point, is that people think their things are worth more than they are. Even in luxury, right? And you have to manage the expectation. And I was dealing with this recently with someone who's like, I want, $600. I said, well, that means I have to price it for $1,200. And guess what? It's sitting here on Real for $350. I said, so we have a disconnect. There's no way I can sell your bag for $1,200 when it's $300 over here and you want $600. And really like having to be very, very forceful with what you can do and not apologize for. This is what here's the research, here's the market rate, this is not.
You're the expert and have faith in yourself.
And the condition, and it's got scratches, and you have to be realistic. To get a premium price, it's got to be in great condition. It needs to be like, they need to have used it like 1 or 2 times, and have everything. But do not be afraid to push back at someone and say, look, this is the market. Here's the evidence. Here, we'll look together. Let's look online together. You can see what this bag is going for. We divide that by half. Plus, it's going to get on sale at some point. So you have to really manage expectations and consignment. And that's a very important point, and not be afraid of that, because there's too much out there. The last point I want to say is there's so much inventory out there. You can't handle it all. There's too much of it. Right. And so we can handle, we got 1,000 pieces from one estate. We only, hold like a couple thousand pieces in our store from one place.
Yeah,
There's so much out there. So there's no shortage. You just have to tap into the people who have the good stuff. Just do the networking, create your contract, and get started.
This was an amazing live. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you everybody for joining. That's a wrap. I think I already did my spiel. So that is a wrap. Thank you. I hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me.
You are welcome.